since COVID, we've learned that there's tremendous value in meeting in person. And we've been back in person for a few years. And at this stage, it appears the Las Vegas meeting is well on its way to being the largest annual meeting in history. And I know from the detailed programming and the hard work of AUA leadership and AUA staff and all of the presenters and speakers that this is just going to be a fantastic week, and I can't wait for it to show up.
Hello and welcome to our WInnovations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle A. Richards, and we have a super exciting program planned today. We're kicking off season 3 and are thrilled to be back in the Department of Urology studios at the University of Wisconsin. Our podcast largely focuses on innovation within urology, but for this episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Stephen Nakada, to help preview the upcoming American Urological Association AUA annual meeting taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada, coming up April 26th through the 29th. A brief word about Dr. Nakada. He is the current president of the AUA, and he has called Wisconsin his home since 1995 when he joined the faculty and quickly ascended to division chief in 2001. He was then named the inaugural chair of the Department of Urology in 2008, successfully shepherding in the new era of urology at UW-Madison, growing the department to 24 clinical faculty today. In addition to his service as department chair, he serves as chief administrative physician for the UWMF practice plan and is really one of the true legends in the field of organized urology. We are absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Nakada in the studio for our session today, which we're calling the AUA Annual Meeting, High Stakes Urology. Welcome to the program, Steve.
Thanks, Kyle. Delighted to be with you tonight.
Now, for those listeners that have never been to the AUA Annual Meeting, because we do have a pretty broad audience here, Steve, how would you describe it?
Well, annual meeting of the AUA is the largest meeting of urologists in the world annually. Typically, the meeting spans 3 to 4 full days, and programming is extensive. There are hands-on courses, there are plenary sessions, there are debates, there are posters, there are podium sessions, there are social programs, there are leadership programs, business programs, innovation programs, and it really is, an unbelievable opportunity. Areas of urology that you're interested in, you get a chance to be with the experts and be with the leaders in the field in a very, non-hierarchical way. In particular, since COVID, we've learned that there's tremendous value in meeting in person, and we've been back in person for a few years. And at this stage, it appears the Las Vegas meeting is well on its way to being the largest annual meeting in history. And I know from the detailed programming and the hard work of AUA leadership and AUA staff and all of the presenters and speakers that this is just going to be a fantastic week, and I can't wait for it to show up.
Yeah, I've been to probably about a dozen or more of these meetings, and I'm really looking forward to Las Vegas. I've never been to Las Vegas before, believe it or not, but it's a great location. How does the AUA decide where to hold these meetings?
Well, this is a long process, and really because of the extreme size of the meeting and all the requirements of the meeting in terms of space and in terms of flexibility and even hotel rooms, there are limited venues. So we're actually out to 2032 in terms of selected venues. And some of it is based on rotation in terms of the size of the city, the access to the city, the size of the convention center, and so on. And some are new opportunity cities or occasional opportunity cities that might, give opportunity to all the participants to have a different experience. Las Vegas is not in the regular rotation, so it's a unique opportunity.
Yeah, and what's the role of the president in the annual meeting, Steve?
Well, at the level of the annual meeting, this is really technically run by the secretary of the AUA, who's Dave Penson from Vanderbilt, as well as the director of the Office of Education, who's Jay Rahman from Penn State. But the president continues to lead the board of directors and lead the direction of the American Urologic. So we host a board meeting at annual meeting with all the board, and we also have the chance to meet with all our physician and non-physician consultants at that time. Also, there is going to be a fundraiser of the Urology Care Foundation on Saturday night. So, I'll be hosting that, as well as hosting our annual awards dinner and an annual president's reception, where we get the opportunity to interact with presidents of all societies around the world, as well as leaders from all the sections of the American Urologic, as well as all the specialty societies. So really at AUA, I'm much more of a host. I will give a lecture, a presidential address on leadership and decision-making on Tuesday morning. And I'll still teach my usual Stone course with my colleagues, Dr. Margaret Knadler, Peggy Pearl, and Brett Johnson. But predominantly my role at the AUA is more of a host rather than technically running the meeting, which is up to the rest of the team.
And I was looking at the program, and there's a lot going on for sure, including, you alluded to some of our partners at UW. Many of the UW faculty are engaged in lots of activities at Las Vegas, whether it be teaching courses or moderating sessions. Can you highlight some of the activities that our own faculty are engaged with at the AUA?
Well, as you well know, we are really blessed that we have such a great team. And I think it's particularly exciting because we have faculty involved at all levels. Betsy Coney, one of our newest faculty, is already moderating a poster session in bladder cancer and giving a plenary talk, giving the key takeaways from this meeting on kidney cancer. So these are two great honors. Dave Gerard, who is the winner of a major award, the Hugh Hampton Young Award for Research in Science and Urology, he is speaking as well on the advanced prostate cancer course. Vinaya Bhatia, one of our newer young faculty, who's a pediatric urologist, is in the crossfire controversies in urology on hypospadias, narrow later management considerations from infancy to adulthood. And Vinaya is an outstanding speaker and has her own hypospadias research program that she's submitted and is funded for. So, this will be a very, very good crossfire discussion. My colleague, Margaret Knadler, is moderating a podium session on stone disease, as well as working on our surgical courses I already mentioned. We also have Frank Lynn, who is a outstanding faculty member in urologic reconstruction and pelvic surgery, and he's debating the optimal evaluation for complicated male LUTS. Emmy Sorrell, another of our younger faculty, is moderating a poster session on stone disease. Will Rickey, who is our tremendous PhD director of research, who is well-funded and is really a national expert on basic science research in benign disease and urology. He'll be speaking at the Basic Science Symposium. And, finally, you, Kyle, one of our true leaders, is moderating a poster session on bladder cancer, in addition to receiving a presidential citation for your efforts in creating our bladder cancer program. So it's a rich week for UW. It's a rich week for really urology, and we're lucky to be part of it.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting all that, Steve. It's really an impressive list of accomplishments and great efforts by many of our faculty here at University of Wisconsin in the Department of Urology. The UW team also really had a banner year with a multitude of research abstracts accepted for presentation. Can you just speak to maybe some of our listeners that are not familiar with the process? What does it mean to have an abstract accepted for presentation at this meeting? And then maybe highlight some of the abstracts that our team accepted that you'd like to go into a little bit of depth on.
Well, the way of scientific meetings is sort of the exchange of ideas. And the exchange of ideas, are based on merit, if you will, because we don't have unlimited time to discuss all the work that's being done. So the AUA has a fairly competitive process, and probably right around a third or less of all abstracts are accepted. And this is a peer review process, and many of our faculty participate as reviewers in the area. And it's, I think a great honor to have a paper on at AUA. So it's really something. And, this year we have 22 resident presentations, which is a tremendous opportunity both for our residents and for practicing urologists to hear from some of the younger urologists in the country on the work that's being done at our center and many others. Of note, in terms of the research, there are a lot of papers. Again, we're, I think, total close to 30 or more abstracts, but maybe a few warrant some discussion. The first relates to a large multi-center study that's led by Margaret Knadler with contributions from Mehta Gupta at Mount Sinai, Bodo Knudsen at Ohio State, Sri Sivalingam at the Cleveland Clinic, Kimura Scotland at UCLA. And this study, what it looks at is comparing thulium and holmium laser therapy for stone disease, as these are the two sort of latest iterations for stone fragmentation, efficiency, and safety. And the multi-center nature of it is powerful because we have centers that are primarily using either thulium, holmium, or both, even though obviously all centers have both. And we did our own work initially at our center and found no benefit or difference between the two. And certainly that just espouses to the urologist selecting the laser energy and the footprint that's suitable to their institution. But, as with any good single center study, there are limitations. So we embarked on a multi-center study not less than 2 years later, which is now completed. I can't give you the final bits on the data, but I will say that the findings are similar, and the thulium and holmium with Moses laser technology are very similar yet highly effective at the treatment of stones, and many stones that are in the kidney as well as ureter. So I think this is just an important study, in the nature of it answers a vital question in a randomized way. And while all studies don't have to be randomized controlled, this type of study is valuable because, these two treatments are used frequently, and it's good to know if there are any differences, particularly in terms of complications as well.
Yeah, having a randomized controlled trial is great, though, in this space. I mean, it's really hard to do RCTs in surgical patients. So, kudos to the team for doing that. I wanted to ask you about another study that's being presented as an abstract that's a little bit, I would say, less scientific in the sense that there's quite a few of our members in our group initiatives are historical papers, and the AUA does a really nice job highlighting the history of urology. And there was one that really caught my eye. It was looking at complications of medical education, examining the history and evolution of morbidity and mortality conference. Sachin Patel, who's one of your former fellows, is the primary author, along with Keegan Steele, one of our residents, Dan Williams, our program director, and yourself as senior author, Steve. Can you speak a little bit to that abstract?
Well, yes. Well, first off, Sachin Patel, who is practicing in Chicago, is on our staff as a clinical faculty. He is the winner of the William Dudich History Award this year, which is a very high honor. So strongest kudos to Sachin. With relating to the abstract, the first thing I'll say is that much can be learned from history. And as you state, the AUA, the history forum at the AUA is actually one of the most interesting sessions of the meeting. And I think the longer I'm in practice, the longer I value not only the presentations, but really, the lessons from them. And I think you can ultimately do a better job in current state, understanding how we got to current state. And this study is really a survey-based study looking at the evolution of mortality and morbidity conference. And, in short, the critical take-homes is that really these are educational conferences, and, it's opportunities at learning. And at the end of the day, if you look at surgical outcomes and surgical outcomes research, really what's most important is to evaluate, complications and learn from complications. And that doesn't change over time because of the continuing innovation that goes on in our field. One of the reasons I went into urology is because this is a field where there are numbers of innovators. And I think in reality, the minimally invasive nature of urology has made it truly a field of wide opportunity in terms of innovative procedures, innovative techniques, and a lot of that's related to the natural location of our the organ systems we treat, as well as the high degree of innovative technologies that are available for fragmenting stones, treating tumors, managing strictures, and the like. So with innovation comes complications, and with complications comes the need for M&M. And I think, M&M historically and currently has evolved well into a concept of what we can learn from our mistakes, not necessarily playing the blame game. So, I think that's my take home from it. And I think the details of the history specifically are probably best left to actually going to the forum and enjoying it. But either way, if I could go to 3 or 4 sessions, and usually that's about all I can go to, History Forum would be in my top 3.
Yeah, it's definitely an event that if you're not familiar with it, it's worth a look if you've never been to the History Forum. And I'm the new historian for the North Central section of the AUA, so I've become more interested and engaged in the history of our field over the past several years.
Yeah, no, your work is outstanding, and congratulations on that too.
Yeah, thank you. There was one other abstract that piqued my interest. I think we have time to touch on. It's titled "The Risk of Occupational Hearing Loss During Percutaneous Nephrolithotomy." I thought that was kind of an interesting, question to sort of look at. And Megan Radel, who's one of our third-year residents, is the first author, and Emmy Sorrell, one of our endourologists, is the senior author on that paper. Any thoughts on that abstract, Steve?
Yeah, well, it's a terrific concept. And I think, the first thing I'll say is an important area in academic urology that is evolving is the concepts of wellness and risk assessment within the job workplace. Historically, that was never a focus. And, as a result, urologists have been receiving lots of radiation and have had a lot of sort of on-the-job injuries, related to prolonged procedures, sitting and doing cases in lithotomy for hours, and even in my era, doing, prolonged laparoscopic procedures and cervical, neck, and vertebral, concerns for many surgeons. So I think the idea of looking at surgeon safety, surgeon comfort is important for the simple reason that, surgeons tend to be in their prime after a certain amount of experience. So theoretically, many top people believe, that if you can extend the healthy lifespan of your surgical career, that will be invaluable, not only to patients, but to the workforce. So I think it's important to look at safety for the physician, fitness and wellness for the physician, as well as occupational hazard. So this paper looks at a standard occupational hazard that's really just not been looked at. And this is the effect of hearing loss from the utilization of lithotrites. And the question you would ask is, does it really matter? And the short answer is, we don't know, but the answer will be yes. And I think the other question is, well, how good a hearing do you need if you're going to be a surgeon? And I'd make the case you need very good hearing, because as you well know, communication in the operating room is critical to the success of the operation and to the success of the team, and to the management of the ongoing procedure or even the post-procedural and pre-procedural aspects of any surgery. So hearing loss is an important question. Dr. Radel will help answer it for you when you attend her lecture, and she has several, as you and I both know. I think this is also a very good educational area. And I think at the end of the day, I appreciate the selection of sort of 3 different papers, one being a high-level clinical randomized controlled trial, as compared to an article looking at the history of urology, which is an area that's relatively novel, even though it's history, right? So it's sort of a paradox. And then at the end of the day, wellness and safety for the surgeon, which I think has gained much traction most recently. And probably, if you look at all the innovations in urology, since I've been in practice, robotics would be one of them, because it allows the surgeon to sit at a console and extend their career.
Very well said. And I think it does show the diversity of research that's being done within our department. It's, some good basic science research, some good translational work, research on wellness and resident education. We don't have time to go through all 30 of the abstracts, but the oncology team submitted quite a few good papers as well, as did the endourology team and many of our general urology team as well. So thanks for taking a look at those few, Steve, and giving us a high-level overview. Is the AUA doing anything novel this year to make the experience better or maybe different or more efficient for folks that are attending?
Well, under Dave Penson, a lot has changed already in short order. And it's not to say that John Denstedt wasn't terrific, because he was. And I think if you look at the current AUA, the plenary sessions have achieved a high level of interest. We have one of our keynote speakers is a non-urologist who's focused in AI. In addition, David has done a very good job at looking at areas that are less, well traveled or utilized to try to position both the plenary and the various subplenaries and the abstract sessions so that you can design your own meeting. Whether you are a general urologist that has multiple interests, or if you're a specialty urologist, you can likely, when you look at this program, attend all the things you want to attend. And a good example, which hits home, is, the president's address is not always rated the highest. And so for this year, David has placed me on the morning of the last day. I'm right before Betsy Coney, who will be giving the take-home messages. But I think at the end of it, perhaps that'll be the best way to do it. And I think there'll be a lot of people there anyway. But my point is that we're trying to make the AUA user-friendly. Now, you want to get into some specifics. We have a session called Clinical Trials in Progress, which is actually held in the exhibit area and is one of the best sessions I attended last year. We had a paper in it. Actually, Margaret presented the early phase of the RCT of the laser study. And in point of fact, we've submitted a stent trial under Aliantar, as we've submitted it to go into the Clinical Trials in Progress session. And there are 300 people there, and it's a very informal yet informative look at what other people are doing and the pitfalls that come of clinical trials in progress. The other area that's new is called the paradigm shifting papers. So rather than someone having to figure out where the most important clinical papers are in this mass of poster and podium sessions, the committee has selected, I believe it's 6 cancer and 6 benign paradigm shifting abstracts that'll be presented on the plenary. So if you sit at the plenary, you can get the best of the papers right there. Another approach to getting that information is to go to the take-home messages or the takeaways at the end of the meeting. And I think even a better approach, for those who can't attend the meeting or don't stay till the end, the entire AUA meeting for subscribers is available online. So you can watch whatever it is you choose to. And I think that adds value not only to the audience, but to the presenters, because they are heard even though the room may not always be full. So I think the AUA continues to be more of a user-focused meeting as opposed to, sort of an academic waltz, if you will. And I think that's going to bode well for, the satisfaction with the meeting and people's desire to come back.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's definitely a lot packed into those 3 or 4 days. It's good to plan ahead. So if you're a new attendee, definitely go online and try to plan your steps ahead of time so you know where you need to be and what you want to see, because there's just too much to see everything. Just to wrap up, Steve, so what are you looking for the most at this year's meeting?
Well, presidency aside, I think the real value of the AUA annual meeting is, the opportunity to interact with your colleagues. And certainly in the academic world, most everybody is there. And depending on the forum you're at, I'll get to see folks that I only see once or twice or 3 times a year. And I think it's a tremendous networking opportunity It's a tremendous social opportunity. So I always look forward to the meeting, predominantly to catch up with folks. And I think you're a good example of somebody who understands that success in academic medicine is really a good approach to managing key relationships in the field. And the annual meeting is the only time you bring everybody together. And, specialty meetings are terrific and are efficient in that regard. But at the end of the day, all urologists matter. And so the annual meeting gives us that forum. So, I can't think of a better place for that. And there are good social events. There's an opportunity for industry to interact with us through the exhibit hall. And there's a resident competition, the resident bowl. And so younger trainees really get to meet other young trainees, as well as meet other potential fellowship directors or potential bosses if they take a job somewhere. So it's a very congenial thing. And over the years, it has become much more of that ilk rather than a competitive meeting, which perhaps back when I was a younger faculty, it was a lot of, the different programs at the poster and podium level sort of competing with each other. And today, I think it's more of a sharing meeting. And, that's a generational change that I've observed. And obviously, it's one for the better.
I agree 100%. I think networking, seeing colleagues, the UW alumni reception, which we'll have, seeing our former residents and fellows come back, and it's just phenomenal. And thank you, Steve, for all your leadership as president of the AUA, as well as leader of our department. We've run out of time, but thanks again, Steve, for being on the program.
Well, listen, thanks for all your leadership and your efforts. Also, thanks to Sandra Milla, who does a tremendous job with getting the podcast into the high-level form it is, and look forward to the meeting and seeing all of you again.
I'd like to say thanks again to Steve, our guest, Steve Nakada. Sandra Miller, our editor and producer, as Steve alluded to, has done a fantastic job. And thank you all, our listeners out there. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
WInnovations is a production from the Department of Urology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health. Thanks for listening.